This is Rugby Unity. I am David Pembroke and Ewen McKenzie. We missed you earlier in the week and I've been wondering all week what was on your pad from last weekend's matches. What did you write down as you watched the rugby over last weekend?
There was a bit of deja vu in some of it, but I said these days I must be getting old and cranky. I get bogged down with the refereeing bits and pieces because I'm looking at it and I went through I actually went back and looked at all the score lines and I just look. If you look on the World Rugby website, you can see the match review and you just see the timeline and you see yellow card, 7 points to the opposition. And you just see that happening time and time again. So when the referee's blowing the whistle, he's just given the opposition 7 points, basically on a yellow card situation. So that still is my bugbear at the moment. It's been all that way all season. And I've seen it mentioned in dispatches too. People are starting to wonder what impact that's going to have come World Cup if it keeps going that way. But it's we had obviously the red card, the straight red card, which was a refereeing decision, and you see them occasionally. Usually they just default to the sideline. But we see knockdowns that don't get penalised the week before. Then we saw a knockdown another game. The guy went to the bin. It was in a tackle, but he still knocked it forward, so he went to the bin. So it's sort of like I'm sitting back looking at it from a broad perspective. The frustrations of coaching, and Eddie can answer the question. I saw his game as well. Be like prevalent. Like I wouldn't be able to get past it on a Monday trying to deal with the things I can control as a coach, but then you've got all these these intangibles that are not. They happen in a game, but they're not intentional and they're not foul, but they're still ending up in 7 points to the opposition, at least. It's not even that. In fact, you'll see 7 points and then you often see a try just after the yellow card period expires because the team's still fatigued from having to defend one short. So you'll often see a two-try outcome. So I'm just not sure that from the game that we want, from a world perspective, that playing 15 on 14 is the right way. When I look at other sports and how they deal with foul play and things like that, I just think that we've got to rethink that whole thing because it does have an impact on the scoreline. Simple as that. And so that's where I'm stuck. That's my big picture stuff. Obviously the results, some went the way you'd expect. Australia, I mean, Italy, I said I think the week before, Italy's one of the most improved sides. England's obviously been doing well of late too, so they're two sides, but England's been one of the most improved sides. Italy's been the most improved sides from the Six Nations, so I wasn't surprised that they were able to hang in there and come away with that result. And they benefit from yellow card too, so I'm not absolving them that they benefit from that too. They got a couple in that period. So that's
well. Just before you came on, Ewen McKenzie, Eddie Jones and I were talking about it. Eddie Jones, let's have your views on Ewen McKenzie's views of last weekend before we jump into the big matches this weekend, and we'll draw a line under it after we have this conversation.
Oh, I think Ewan's 100% right. I think we've got to find a way to keep as much as possible 15 on the field, and there needs to be repercussions for foul play and for cynical play. But I think as Ewan alluded to, the use of the yellow card is so random and so inconsistent that it provides a lot of inconsistency in the games, and I think we need to sort that out as a game. And I go back again to the referee and the TMO. I think we really need to sort that out and sort that out quickly.
You're seeing that in the games. You're seeing in the games the referee, you could hear it on the cam, on the microphone. The referee's actually getting consensus decisions. He's not being the referee. He's asking the touch judges their opinion, and so you have this sort of collaboration on the outcome. It's not even the TMO. It's sort of like five people having a conference to try and so decisions made by committee aren't a great outcome. So they all sort of try and steer each other to some sort of So some referees are doing that, some aren't. Some have been quite decisive and just going, yeah, that wasn't an issue, move on. And I'm favouring those referees at the moment. They're the ones who have been given charge of the game and they're taking control of the match. And whether you like it or not, they're being authoritative, and that's what their role is. And they're trying to do the right thing by the game, I think. And that's how the game's always been for 100 and something years. But now we've got into this sort of committee stuff, and we're sort of watching these things appear on TV, and I just don't. It's not adding to the spectacle. It's not adding to. It's stuffing the scoreboard. It's fatiguing for the team that's the other 14 players who didn't do anything wrong. They get fatigued trying to deal with the situation for 10 or 15 or 20 minutes. So we've got to look at the whole thing and say, is this the best outcome for a game? I just don't see other sports in that scenario as often as we are, where we're playing uneven numbers.
Eddie Jones, a final word on the refereeing for you.
As the great Jack Gibson said, if you got a good idea, give it to a committee and they'll stuff it up. Refereeing by committee is stuffing up a lot of good things. So enough said.
All right. Yes, let's draw a line under that, because while there was, and again, it's an issue for everybody. And if you just have a look around on the web and a lot of the conversations, it is an issue that at some point has got to have to be resolved in some way, shape or form. But aside from that, the intensity and the quality of the rugby that was played last weekend was compelling. And here we sit at the end of the week looking forward to another big weekend. And really perhaps the biggest match of the weekend, France-South Africa, was last week. England, New Zealand perhaps has top billing this weekend. Ewen McKenzie, the sides have been selected. England have largely gone back with the team that played against Australia. Finn Smith is out of the squad after playing against Fiji and playing quite well. A couple of changes for New Zealand. Lester Fainuku is onto the wing. Billy Proctor comes in at 13. Scott Barrett returns as a captain. So your thoughts about England, New Zealand?
Well, from a selection point of view, England's gone back to the side that played against Australia, and the All Blacks have gone back. All their injuries have obviously recovered and whatever, so they've just pretty much returned all the players. Unless it's still an injury, they've pretty much returned the players to where they are. So I guess there's no real surprise. I thought England might mix it up a bit more because they've still got all their Lions sitting on the bench, but they'll work for them against Australia, and I think they're probably going to try and have a strong finish again. So he's keeping those Lions players, and they're all good players. They're keeping them lean and mean, and getting the best out of them in the second half because they're obliged to go out there and perform. So I think that's a good way for England to go, and New Zealand pretty much horses for courses. They've returned the players. Despite some good performances, Parker must have been injured or something last week. I'm not sure, but I didn't say anything. But he's back in there, and then the rest of it's sort of fine because he's just filling in gaps. Proctor's come back from injury, so otherwise it's pretty much what you'd expect. So the All Blacks have got a few good young players coming through, so. They're protecting. They're keeping them in there. Carter and Quinn Tapuia, that he's in there. Roy Guard's the key. Back row is what you'd expect. Barrett came back in as captain, so everything shuffled from there. So there's no surprises in any of that. It'll just get down to the tactics. So I'll think more about that. It's hard when they're only getting the team list like an hour ago or 2 hours ago, so it makes it a bit harder to ponder. But Eddie might have more thoughts.
Yeah, we'll come back to you in a moment. But Eddie Jones is a former England coach playing the All Blacks at Twickenham. Where does that sit in terms of English rugby? Because my experience of it is that it is always a huge game for England and for England supporters.
Yeah, I remember they talking about it when I was there. They could sell the ground out 3 times. So they charge the ticket prices of 3 times the normal price. So whoever goes there doesn't want to watch the TMO and the referee. So that's one thing we want. Second thing is I reckon England are probably 12 months ahead of New Zealand in terms of development. And I think they'll be a little bit more cohesive than New Zealand. But if you look at the record of the game between England and New Zealand, I think New Zealand won 60% of the tests between England and New Zealand. So there's that bit of a psychological block for the English when they play against New Zealand. But I think they'll play pretty direct. They'll have too much power in the second half. I think England's, developing a really good, strong squad, and I emphasise the squad particularly. They've got, depth in their 23, and maybe New Zealand, is still a little bit trailing behind them.
Yeah.
So with that, go on, Ewan.
No, I've got to agree. I mean, I think Eddie's 100% right about England. They're doing well in their development of their squad, and he's moving the players around. But for the big games, he's starting with the younger guys he's relied on in the middle of the year against Argentina. But they're all guys like Earl and Pepper. These guys, they've all got to perform. The two props have got to perform, because when you got Genge, who was captain last week, and Stewart is a very skillful tight end prop. I'm quite impressed with him. So I think between Stewart and Hayes, you've got two very good scrummaging, good playing footballers. That's a luxury that other countries don't have. And then you go back through, then you've got Curry, and Pollock is obviously the rising X-factor guy, but he's on the bench. So it's a really good scenario for a coach, and I think that's showing up in their consistency. They've had 8 wins now, I think, in a row. So there's some good momentum for them going into the World Cup. I think he's really got it sorted out. And, to be able to drop the likes of Finn Smith, you never quite know what's going on in the background, but to have guys like that who aren't even in the 23. So I think England's in a good position. Tactically, it'll be how they play the game. I'll see if there's anything different there. But they'll be direct. They've got, as soon as you see forward there, you know roughly what the tactics are going to probably be, and then they'll probably finish with a bit more of a flourish and a bit more X factor, a bit more lateral movement. They'll move that, and they've got the skillful forwards to do that too in the second half. So I'll be probably direct and with a bit more flair in the second half. So no secrets there. It just shows up in the selections. So Ford will direct the game. They'll take points, and then it's a question whether they can contain the All Blacks, and they'll need to tackle like they tackled against Australia. But hopefully the All Blacks present a slightly more lateral attacking picture and make it a bit harder for the English because they really teed off in Australia in the tackling side of things a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. Eddie Jones, in terms then of developing and building a squad, you say they're sort of 12 months ahead of New Zealand, but you mentioned the 60-40, but also the last 3 matches between England and the All Blacks have been won by the All Blacks, the team coached by Scott Robertson, although the margin has only been by 7 points or less in each of those victories. How important is it that when you're developing a team that you come to these moments where, okay, we've got to get across this, we've now got to actually beat them? How important is it in terms of the confidence in and around the team as you're developing that squad to be able to secure these victories? The bookmakers have England now as favourites, but just how important will it be for them to get the victory in terms of continuing to build momentum into the maturity of the team and the squad?
Well, Pat Riley, the LA Lakers coach and Miami Heat basketball coach, had a good phrase called breakthrough games. You're developing a team, you're building a bit of confidence, but then you have this one game where you get a breakthrough, and then the team really starts to believe what they're doing. And I think, a game like this for England on the back of 10 wins would be the sort of game they're looking for, that would really encourage the players to work a little bit harder, really believe, get on the same page and can go to the next step, because they're a team that's just outside the top 3 now, and to get into that top 3, these are the sort of games you got to win.
Yeah. No, it certainly feels that way to me, and certainly lots to look forward to. But Eddie Jones, you're saying England, and England by By how many?
Oh, that's for the bookmakers, mate. England will win by a few. Oh, it'll be a close game. We'll go right down the wire. We'll go down the right wire, mate.
And what about for you, Ewen McKenzie? Can you see?
Look, I've been impressed with England. I'm just looking at the All Blacks. I'm looking at their bench. They've got a bit to come into the game, and we saw Damien McKenzie, win the game from last week. So I think there's a bit to come in there. They've got good props coming in. So I'll go the All Blacks by a couple of points. But it could go either way. But I'll tip the All Blacks by a couple. It's all going to get down to the mental side of the game, and the last 20 minutes will be really interesting. Yeah,
the referee Ewen McKenzie is Andrea Piardi. What do we get from him? Or maybe that's a better question to direct to Eddie Jones. But Piardi, what do we see from Piardi this weekend in what will be a pressure cooker atmosphere? As you say, it'll be absolutely packed, huge expectation. The England fans will be right behind their boys. It will be a great occasion. So how does Piardi react? How does Piardi manage the match?
Well, I know he's seen as one of the rising referees in world rugby, so it's a good opportunity for him to prove that he can handle the situation, and let's hope he referees the game. He referees the game. Who's the TMO? They should put the TMO in lights now first.
Well, they do actually announce them, and maybe we should need to do that. But exactly. I don't know. I just don't want to talk about it. I just want to be able to come on and talk about the rugby and not talk about the referees for 1 week in a row. But the thing is, this is what is, these are the issues. And if we are going to help secure the future prosperity of rugby union around the world, it's clearly an issue that needs more work. But anyway, we'll move on and we'll move across to Ireland, to the match between Australia and Ireland. James O'Connor returns for Australia at 10. Len Ikitau is back at 12. Alan Alalatoa in for Taniela Tupou. Valentini starts. Hooper moves to lock. Frost to the bench. Skelton was injured. And from Ireland's point of view, Sam Prendergast replaces Jack Crowley at 10, which is the big news. And Mac Hansen is at fullback. And Porter starts from the bench. McCarthy in his place, the young prop. So Ewen McKenzie, after a disappointing loss for Australia, is this the team that can bring home the bacon for Australia?
Well, I'm not sure. O'Connor's been the go-to, and he's broadly delivered, but he's been delivering predominantly in the sort of back end of games, and so I don't know. I think he'll give the team confidence, and I certainly like that he can play at the line. That's the bit that I like about O'Connor, and he's done those little runarounds. We talked about that a few times, so he doesn't mind that side of the game, which I think will be good. And so there'll be some comfort there with Ikitau and then Suali, and maybe that's going to be good. I think I see something there, but. But let's start the forward pack. Bell was there last week. He had a shoulder problem. I question whether, and you see those shoulder problems often when people score tries like they did. So I'm betting that he's tweaked something there. Whether that's relevant or not, I don't know. Fezler they've stuck with. He swapped in. Pollard, I think, been having a good season, so I'm not quite sure why that changed. And Alatara, I think, is a good player, but I don't think he's their best scrummager. At tight end, so I think Ireland will be looking at the scrum as an opportunity to put some pressure on early on. So we'll see where that goes, especially with a lighter weight second row with Hooper going into the second row, more mobility, but not as big if you take out Frost. And then back rows, we know they haven't made a decision there. A lot of talk about Wilson during the week about whether he should have been freshened up or maybe played off the bench or something like that. So no real change there. I think they're avoiding decisions for me around the back row, and then now they've sort of transferred the decision into the second row rather than making another decision. So the forward contest, Ireland's pretty experienced in that game, so I think that Australia have to do well there. and then you get into the back. So it's a question of what sort of ball Australia's getting, whether it's on the front foot, what sort of speed. It wasn't good last week, so they'll be hoping for that, and that'll bring the likes of Suwali. Hopefully he'll get some touches maybe directly from O'Connor so he can get some room to move. And then you've got Jorgensen, the fullback, is interesting. I think that's not. I think the two wings and the fullback is an interesting combination, and I think that I'll be hoping they do well. I think Jorgensen, if he gets the ball a bit more, we haven't really seen much of him. He hasn't been able to get the ball in recent weeks, and Donganu's quite a good player and robust. So, and we've seen Harry Potter doing good stuff as well. So, yeah. Few changes in the backs. Ireland's still got British Lions coming off the bench, so that's not a bad situation for them. It's hard. I stick with the forward battle. That's where I sort of get bogged down with and sort of think, well, have we got the best forward pack for Ireland? Don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, Eddie Jones, your thoughts?
Maybe three key things: Pendergast versus O'Connor. Like Pendergast's got subtle skills, takes the ball to the line, good decision maker. So he probably makes the Irish attack more like when Sexton was playing. Crowley's more of a robust 10, but he's a very good ball player. The area he struggles a little bit in is his one-on-one defence. He's quite slight, and he's a young player at the moment, so he'll develop that. But I know they've got great hopes for him, so he'll be up against O'Connor, even though they don't play directly against each other. O'Connor's shown, as Ewan said, to be able to make good decisions, and he'll probably get Suwali in the game more, because I think Suwali the last couple of tests, probably the last 4 or 5 tests, been pretty quiet. Hasn't had much influence on the game. I think Ireland's really struggled in their line-out. So it's interesting Foster's out because I think Foster's been seen as Australia's premier line-out forward. And that's an area Ireland's, really struggled in the last 2 tests. So that's an interesting selection for Australia. And I think the third big area is going to be around the breakdown. McBride versus Van der Flyer, the back rows contesting at the breakdown. Who's the referee, mate? Because Ireland will want to play long phases, particularly with Pendergast there. And Australia, if they play that two-sided, quite tight attack, will want to play long phases as well. So the breakdown will become pretty influential in who wins the game.
The referee's Carl Dixon.
Okay, so he likes a lot of contests at the breakdown. So it means that fast ball is going to be at probably not a lot of fast ball in the game, a lot of contests, a lot of conjecture over who's got their hands on the ball first. So it could be a pretty messy sort of game. So maybe the kicking then becomes even more important in this game.
And Prendergast has a beautiful kicking game, and we did see it when he came on last week against you in the Japan game. He was really able to get his team into very good attacking positions, wasn't he? And it was very hard for the Japanese team to defend against the line-out because he was able to get them so close, from his kicking.
Yeah, he's got a very educated boot, mate. He's been to a good school.
Very good. Okay, so who gets it for you? Who wins? Ireland, Australia?
I think because of the referee, it's going to be a really tight game. I think, Ireland are trying to find they're regenerating their team and they're lacking a bit of confidence in their line-out. Although they scored a few points against us in the last 20 minutes, it was a pretty tight game up to there. And I think Australia, will be smarting after the Italian defeat. So they'll be full of energy and full of endeavour. So, again, I reckon this one will go right down the wire.
Okay. And what about for you, Ewen McKenzie? You've had time now to think about it. You've looked at it.
Yeah.
What do you see? What jumps off the page?
I'm pleased to see Tizano's at least on the bench. So that gives them he makes a difference in games. So I know he's only one player, but Frost will be coming off the bench. He'll be, all those guys will be enthusiastic. So I agree with Eddie. I think Australia will be looking to finish the season with a couple of wins, ideally. So they've been petering out in recent times. So I think that they'll be motivated. I agree with Eddie in terms of the nature of the attack. I think O'Connor will give Australia some confidence and a little bit of X factor. And with Jorgensen back, there's a bit more there. So I think that's going to keep Australia interested and in the game. So yeah, a tight one. It's easy to say the home team will get there, but I think I mentioned a few weeks ago where Ireland is on the mountain, whether they're still climbing or going down the backside or whatever. So I think there'll be a little bit of doubt there. They didn't get there against New Zealand, so they'll be yearning for a win against a name like a team that's compatible with them. So yeah, I'm going to favour Australia just.
Yeah, indeed. All right. Well, we look forward to that match. Before we come to comments and the questions from the third voice, we'll quickly take a look at the South Africa-Italy game. And Eddie Jones, you said that one of your three takeaways from the Rugby Championship was the incredible depth of the South African side. And we see that writ large in the selections this weekend for South Africa. Rassie Erasmus, the South African coach, has made 11 changes. And Ben, Jason Dixon, Zachary Porthen, Johan Grobler, Edwill van der Merwe, Ethan Hooker, Kanan Moody, John Klein, Franco Mostert, Morne Vandenberg, Andre Pollard have all been selected in the side. And it's remarkable to see that type of depth, to be able to select that quality for what will be a difficult match. As we've said, the Italians are improving. But also I think the other point is around the versatility. Ethan Hooker, earlier in the Rugby Championship, made a name for himself playing out on the wing. Well, he's been selected to play at inside centre at number 12. And indeed, Rassie Erasmus has no outright specialist hooker cover on the bench. And in fact, Marco van Staanden, who will start at 8, should they have a requirement to replace Johan Grobler, he will move from number 8 to start to play at hooker. So
we're not talking rugby, we're building it. Rugby Unity.
Eddie Jones, we'll let him get off. He has work to do with his Japan side, and we'll come to them in just a moment. But Ewen McKenzie, your thoughts then on just that depth for Rassie Erasmus and that ability and that flexibility to be able to mix and match your players, to give players the opportunity to keep them interested. You've mentioned that before previously on the program about managing players because they all want to be playing every week. How do you react when you see Rassie Erasmus being able to select a team such as that?
Well, I know he can select the team, but we've got to work out whether it's going to give him the result he wants. He's obviously going to give a lot of guys a go. I don't have to think back to the Ellis Park game to think where the last time he sort of did similar things and it didn't work so well. He's got the capacity to do it, but is it going to give him the result? I keep saying Italy's one of the most improved teams. I might be proved wrong. They might spank them, but I don't think so. They've got a lot of new combinations, and they've probably been training together as a group because it's a completely different group than was playing the other day. So they've probably done a bit of work together, but they haven't been playing together. So whereas Italy are a fairly settled side. So they'll go out there. I think it'll be pretty no surprises in how they play with Pollard there and the like. But you're relying on a lot of key players, to be able to make that happen. And so whether Italy can put some pressure on, they were good at the breakdown. I've got to say, they were good across the board of getting their hands on the ball at the breakdown against Australia. That's what impressed me. I thought that's gonna count well for them if they can do that instinctively in the Six Nations. That's a point of difference. So they have that capacity. South Africa's got some very good players there, and some that have been doing good things in recent times. But there's a bunch out of position, and as you say, if you lose you don't have to hook for the ball anymore on the scrum. So I can sort of understand where he's going with the replacement hooker. But that doesn't mean Italy's got to take it easy. So I think we've got to take all that into account. Italy's settled. South Africa's a new combination. Rassie's showing faith in the wall, which is great. What's that going to mean? Yeah, maybe South Africa gets there, but I think it'll be close. But maybe I'm wrong. But I think it'll be close because I'm liking some of the stuff that Italy's doing. So hopefully they're not overawed by the situation. Hopefully they're looking at the selection going, gee, that's a win for us. Let's get out there and get stuck in. And they've got some pretty good raw ingredients. So Gonzalez is doing a good job with them. Really good.
Yeah. So you said, I think it was last week, you said you know the coach, Gonzalo Casada, well? You know
not
him?
Well, I know him through the Stade Francais. Everyone's had a stint there at some point in time, and so yes, but yeah, not well, but not well enough to sort of follow and see how they go. He's been doing a good job, I think. Look, he came in at short notice and has done a good job in getting them competitive, and so they've had a good year.
Yeah. Well, again, another match in the north of Italy.
Look at these
Torino.
games on both sides. It's the classic. Is a scalp there for Italy if they really want to go hard, because what's South Africa? So even South Africa on the bench has got a bit of variety. They've got some Quagga Smith and some of the regulars there. So they've got a good bench. Snyman's good, obviously. Snyman's second row is good. So they've got a bit to come into the game to save the situation if they need to. But as I said, Italy's shown really good raw ingredients, good scrum, lineout's been good, very good at the tackle in terms of getting hands on the ball and keeping pressure. So, South Africa's going to have to be accurate, which we know that they're going to play direct. They'll use the high ball, and there's going to be you still got to stop them coming straight at you. They're going to be good at that caper. So, but there's a bit in it there for Italy. So I don't think it's a one-way street, this game.
Yeah. Well, perhaps such as it is, we discussed between England and New Zealand that match, a breakthrough match for England. Perhaps the Italy-South Africa match could be the same thing for the Italian team.
I was watching the Italian team, in one of those the Netflix series, and they were talking about, so their very basic goals have always been, to get a win in the Six Nations. That's sort of where they've been at. Well, they had 2 wins this year, and so you get a significant, that's like, and you finished not on the bottom, not wooden spoon. So that's something, so they're already ticking boxes already. So they're moving in the right direction, and so then it gets down to, at this end of the year, it's about scalps. They've already got Australia on their belt, so South Africa have done them a favour with the selections, because I'm not denouncing anything about, they're all good players. But it's a new combination, so you can, in that space, there's opportunity.
All right. Well, we look forward to watching again another compelling contest at the weekend. And so, to the third voice at Talent Finder says, Eddie Jones understands rugby at a level that most commentators just don't. He should run World Rugby. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. He's no BS. Direct, in-depth knowledge and player-coach understanding is next level. At Jags Bligno, he says, Eddie Jones, I must say, I never liked you even when you coach us, the Bocker with Jake White. But one thing, I always respected you a lot. Great rugby mind, one of the best coaches in your day. At Kerwin says, bless him, Ewen sounds like a very decent person. You always find the true character of people, true character of a person by the way they treat animals. And finally, Bridget says, great discussion, gents. Love the insights, calm and insightful. But we have questions. Sassy Holter says, is there anything Tier 3 or some Tier 2 nations can do better or learn from others when they don't have a huge budget or strong domestic teams? Ewen McKenzie, if you were down in that Tier 2, in that Tier 3 area, what were some of the things that you might be looking to do to improve your performances and your consistency? What are the things that could be learned?
I think, for me, if you want to be competitive, it's your ability to compete at the tackle. So, if you're going to practice any skills, obviously you've got to be able to catch and pass and things like that, the really basic skills. But in terms of a more, from a team perspective, from a competition point of view, the ability to be able to compete for the ball at the breakdown. In other words, to be able to jackal for the ball, I think is a skill that requires specific practice, and it's a skill that can be shared across the team, and it's a skill that will keep you in games. And we saw it. Fraser McWright, like in the last few weeks, he's come up with classic steals at the breakdown. Look, he's actually stolen turnover balls. So in other words, we've lost the ball at the breakdown. Someone's won it, and he's won it back. He's like outstanding. So he got 4 last week against Italy. In a losing performance, that turns games to retrieve possession at the breakdown. So if you want to do one thing, there's extra skill in that. It's not just the catch pass stuff or kicking a ball. It actually requires specific training, and there's lots of different ways to do that. But if you can make that an instinctive skill across your team, that everyone can contribute in that space. And I watched Italy last week against Australia, how they, to a man, were all trying to get in and compete for the ball. If you can do that, then you go a long way to making sure that you're not the loser on the day, because that keeps possession on your side. If you've got the ball, you're not losing. You can't lose the game. So if you can do that it doesn't matter if it's in club rugby as well, same thing sort of applies. If you're good at competing at the contest, then that gives you the best avenue to be on a winning team.
Yep. So at MRVN says, when there's a head contact and the offending player is carded, yellow or red, in my opinion, it should be mandatory for the impacted player to go for an HIA. What do you think?
Well, that makes sense to me based on the ruling that you say that there's head contact, you've got to be checked out. So that sort of makes sense to me as logical. But yeah, I mean, people will tell me otherwise, and it's only minor contact, but that's where we get down to the degrees of what should the yellow card be for, yellow/red card be for. Like if it's, I worry about offences. If you throw a punch and you knock them out, you get a red card. But if you throw a punch and and you miss, nothing happens. So it's to do with the outcome. So that's where we seem to be at. So unless the guy's knocked unconscious with the clean out, they don't seem to worry about that end of it. But it's actually critical to the whole decision as to if there's head contact, then maybe they should be looking at that as part of the outcome. It's messy. The whole thing's messy for me. I really don't understand what the overall objective is, but it's complicated the game, and it's become messy in terms of because I just don't think. I think there's many other instances in the game that just don't get seen or whatever, and the game survived that way for a long time. So yeah, I don't know the answer, but that would make sense what you're saying.
Kurtap, this is a question we've already dealt with on the program, but we'll ask the question anyway. It is extremely frustrating and unprofessional to have unequal numbers of players in teams. It makes it very hard to enjoy the game and usually flags the final result long before the final whistle. Surely the answer is to replace the carded player immediately and deal with the offending player off the field. What do you think? Well, we know what you think, Ewen McKenzie.
Yeah,
you think that's exactly what needs to happen.
Any solution is better than what I think we've got at the moment. So yeah, that's that's another way of doing it. It's probably not a bad way. What we're thinking about, if the guy goes off, then you put someone else on. So at least it's a genuine contest, determined between two teams of 15. That's the ideal. And I know that can't always be the way, but at the moment it's too often that we're playing 14 on 15. Too often every week, and for look at the result. Look at the games last week. There was one game. I think the All Blacks. I think they had like 3 guys in the bin across the game. Like that's 30 minutes with playing 14 on 15. Obviously South Africa was able to win in that scenario. Good luck to them, but that's rare. That is very rare with a red card. But a red card's quite definitive. Yellow cards are the thing that I think are causing a problem because they're definitely giving teams points, and I just don't think it's fair on the customer, the people we're trying to entertain, that they have to put up with that.
Yeah. And the final question for this week from the third voice, and it's Herman, and Herman says, if that red card against South Africa was really valid, we are approaching a situation where it becomes virtually impossible for a very tall man to tackle a significantly smaller man. What are your thoughts, Ewen McKenzie?
I think that's got to be part of the consideration. I'm all for, you've got to use your arms in the tackle, so I'm not leading with the shoulder. I think's fraught with danger. But that is a problem. We're meant to be a game for all shapes and sizes, yet you do have these scenarios quite often where you've got 6'8" players dealing with 5'5" or 5'6" halfbacks, and so that's where we've got to be more cognizant of the total thing. It's just not about the contact; it's about the circumstance. And they showed that one last week at full speed, and it didn't look great, but. There are things players can do to prevent things. We've seen a couple in recent weeks where players are fully upright and they've made head contact, but there was no time and space to do anything different. So I just don't see I don't see the intent there. So if anything, if they're referring these things, they should. If they're going to refer them, they should maybe refer them, then make a decision. Rather than put the guy in the bin, let the TMO, someone else assess it in the background, and then make a decision 10 minutes later. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that's a better way, or replace the guy until the decision's been made about whether there was any intent, what the intent was.
Yeah.
But at least we're still playing 15 on 15. You got a big bench. I mean, we used to have benches of 2 players. Like you had two reserves back in the day. You had 2 reserves, then it went to 4, and now we've got 8. So we've got plenty of players there. So it's not like you can't do that.
PPOP has noticed that there is quite a unique way that he sets up. He lines up the opponent before the scrum. So anyway, we'll save that for next week.
Yeah, I'll have a look.
Okay, PPOP. We'll come back to that next week to get the answer from Eddie Jones. And again, a very big thanks to Eddie Jones for making himself available as he does, even during the week of a test match. As I understand it, probably the only international coach who is doing so at the moment. And it certainly gives people a great insight into the pressures and the strains, because it is now very, very late in the evening in the UK, and he needs to get his 3 hours sleep before he's got to get up. So anyway, back to the rugby. Scotland. Scotland, Argentina. I think this could be a very good contest this weekend. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it is a good contest. Scotland. Argentina's been good. You can't. They've been one of the better sides. They're very consistent. They've been thereabouts. And I was watching the scores last week, and it was level pegging, and then they sort of went away with it against Wales. So it's a good matchup there, because where you want to see where Scotland's up to, in terms of against a good opposition like that. I think they'll be well matched. So and they're creative. Both sides have got good backlines, so that's going to be a good contest. Pretty good. Yeah.
Who do you think gets it? Is it Scotland at home?
You'd think Scotland. Well, no, I'll tip Argentina. I think I like Argentina's consistency, and I think they're pretty streetwise now, and they've been doing well against all the teams ahead of them in the competition. So in the ladder. So I'll tip them. I think Argentina have got they're able to just reproduce now, and so if they don't get there, it won't be by much, but I think Argentina will get there.
Japan versus Wales, number 13 in the world. Japan taking on number 12 in the world. Wales.
Breakthrough game. This is the one. Like, I mean, there's no reason that Japan can't perform. Wales are good in parts. They've been developing a new team. They're good in parts, but so are Japan. And the tackling we saw of Japan against Australia was outstanding. They've got stuff in attack that they can use. So hopefully, and they've got a good enough platform. So I'm hoping that they'll, and they've been, to be fair to them, they've been very competitive. There hasn't been much in the games sort of half time. It's the back end that blew away against South Africa. So I think that that's going to be another tight game. There's a few tight games. It's hard to call that one. I'd like to think maybe Japan get that one. They need a bit of a reward for what they're doing, so that could be their breakthrough game.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, on it being the breakthrough game. I think they will have taken a lot of confidence out of the last few weeks.
Yep.
And Jack Morgan has dislocated his shoulder, the captain of Wales, their talisman, the Lions player, who is a world-class player.
Big loss.
He's not playing.
A lot of time for him, and I think he is a talisman sort of player for them. And he's been able to, just in the rubble of whatever's been going on at Wales, he's been able to poke his head up and got himself into the Lions tour and whatever, and then still, he's one of those guys. When I was talking about skills, if you want to be good at something, he's good at getting his hands on the ball at the breakdown, and that's a really good skill, and that sets you apart. So if anyone wants to practice something, practice that. Because he doesn't even involve the ball. You've got to get to the ball. It's really just competing for the ball. You don't have to do anything with the ball. You just got to get to it. So it's a great skill, doesn't it? Even if you can't catch and pass, that's a good skill to practice. And there's been a few the old flankers that have played lots of test matches that haven't been able to do much else on the field, but they've been really good at that piece. And there's a few Australian ones I'm thinking of. So it's not George Smith.
One with red hair?
Not George Smith. So that's a skill for everyone. There's a skill there for everyone. That doesn't matter what level of footy you're playing. Get your hands on the ball at the breakdown and you make yourself indispensable.
Yeah. And they're 1-1 so far this year. Wales toured Japan. Japan had a victory in the one of the test matches in Japan, and that obviously would build some confidence and belief. You've done it before, you'll do it again.
Yeah. It's a really good scenario, I think, because it's everyone's playing in this window with theoretically their best teams. It's in the international window, so no excuses.
But that's interesting. It's great, isn't it, though? When you go through all of those matches, England, New Zealand, Australia, Ireland, South Africa, Italy, Scotland, Argentina, Japan, Wales, the quality of the rugby, the quality of the contest. And then we finally have France and Fiji, 6 changes to the French team, and Gregory Aldred returns at number 8 and captain. Your thoughts there? About that. France obviously would be a little disappointed, but
France is like South Africa. They change often. They're used to that, so I don't think that'll affect anything there. But Fiji have been pretty competitive. But I think France will be, after last week, they'll be wanting to get back on the right footing, and they'll be just really disappointed not winning at home, but then having that numerical advantage too, and not being able to make the most of that. Like, they'll be really disappointed with all of that. So I think they'll do pretty well, France.
Yeah. So that is the sort of tier 1 matches, but there are plenty of other rugby matches being played over the weekend. And bear with me as I roll through them. Georgia takes on Canada. Portugal takes on Hong Kong, China. Romania versus USA. Spain versus England A. And I've got to say, I'm a big fan of these A matches. Spain played Ireland A last weekend. And on the Rugby Unity Substack, we have a report of that particular occasion where there was a crowd of about 15,000 people watched that match last weekend. And certainly there does seem to be real energy in Spanish rugby. But I think that to give those England A players the opportunity to develop, but also the Spanish players the opportunity to play a higher standard. It's great to see those matches taking place. And Uruguay takes on the All Blacks 15 in those matches. And in the women's rugby, Germany takes on Hong Kong, China. But in the World Cup qualifiers, we're already away this weekend in terms of Belgium. Have defeated Brazil. Samoa have defeated Namibia. So it really lines it up now, Ewen McKenzie. Belgium, Samoa for that critical last place.
Yes. Yeah, next week, next Wednesday, I think it is. That looks like almost a grand final. I haven't seen the points table, but it looks to me like Samoa and Belgium are going head to head for that last spot. So Belgium's come out of the woodwork there, and so that'll be interesting. They've been quite competitive, it appears.
And in the Rugby Europe Trophy, Denmark takes on Lithuania. And Denmark currently 5th, Lithuania 6th, and Lithuania were 5th last season. And that match is in Aalborg. And then the other match in the Rugby Europe Trophy, Czechia takes on Sweden at the Marketa Stadium in Prague, Sweden. Top of the log at the moment, and they take on the third place Czechia team, who are running third. The last time they played in October 2024, Sweden beat Czechia 22 points to 16. And in the Rugby Europe Conference, Cyprus takes on Malta. And I was talking to Eddie Jones during the week, and he let me know, as he does, the Cypriot coach was joining the Japanese team in camp ahead of that particular match. And probably one of the things that's not known, and you were pretty much the same, Ewen McKenzie, you were always very welcoming of bringing other coaches into the setup to share your knowledge to help grow the quality. And it's certainly something that Eddie Jones has done for years and years and years. There'd be hundreds of coaches around the world who've benefited from the commitment that he has to developing the game. But you, very much the same, like-minded, that you're always very generous with your time and very generous with sharing your knowledge and your skills.
Well, you try and do that. You try and help people as they go along. That's all part of the caper. You've got to try and, particularly people, you've got to work out where you fit in the system. So you've got to be helping the people, the next level down to try and come through, and that's, I sit back now and I see a guy like Les Kiss, who was my defence coach of the Waratahs, is now going to be the Wallabies coach very soon. So it's good to see, guys come through and do their time and whatever. And Mick Byrne, there's lots of guys there that I've coached with and had and utilised as sort of assistant coaches and whatever, and they've all sort of then gone through and become their own people. So it's good to be involved in that process. I just want to go back on that qualifying. We were talking about the World Cup qualifying. I think there was a couple of games. I think Samoa played Namibia already. They won 26-8. And Belgium beat Brazil. So what we've got is really it's a contest now, Samoa versus Belgium next week, I think, and that'll put the team, that'll be who qualifies. That's my read of the situation. So, the scores are there. So I think that's where we're up to. I've been watching it since you've been talking about it. I've been keeping an eye on the scores. So I think we've got a couple of big games next week in that qualifying, but I think the key one is Samoa versus Belgium for the qualification. That's my read.
So Ewen McKenzie, just a couple of quick things before we go. One of the things that jumps up a lot in recent weeks is this discussion about off-the-ball effort. And I know Eddie Jones a couple of weeks ago on the program said that he was speaking with Gordon Hamilton Fairley about measuring off-the-ball effort. What is it that people should actually be looking at when they're watching the game to get an understanding about off-the-ball effort and to be able to judge whether a player is making a positive off-the-ball effort?
It's often hard to see if you're watching on the television. It's really reaction time off the deck. The players are all fitted with GPS monitors. You know, they're back behind their neck. You can see them, so they can. It's all measured that way. But you're really looking for, and I'll give an example. I think there was the game against England. Williams, the second rower, he chased back like 40 metres to ground the ball in touch, you know, to prevent England scoring a try. That's an off the ball effort. Like, he's a second rower, it's not really his role, but he was there and he was able to run that distance and do that despite whatever else he was meant to be doing in the game. So they're one-off things. You often don't see as players putting themselves into position again to be involved in the game. And maybe that's chasing the ball, maybe that's finding another opportunity to, but it's really the reaction time off the deck. Like, if you're involved in a tackle or in a ruck or something like that, how quickly it is you're back on your feet and in the game. Because if you're lying on the ground, you're no use to anyone. So it's a matter of how quickly you're back in a position to give yourself an opportunity to make a tackle or an opportunity to carry the ball or to support and often the likes of Fraser McWright, they get in there and steal the ball because someone's been lazy off the deck or not quick enough off the deck to get, so not back into the game. So if you want to look for something simple, just watch in the background the previous ruck and just see how quickly people get back up and how urgent they are to get back into the game.
All right, so in other news, Scottish Rugby have announced that they've reduced their losses by 2/3 and they are hoping to break even next year, and they've increased their revenue by £5.5 million. Here at Rugby Unity, the mission is to help secure the future prosperity of rugby union around the world, and we know that Brett Robinson, the chairman of World Rugby's number one priority is the financial sustainability of the union. So well done to the Scottish Rugby to increase their revenue, but also to forecast a break even. The BBC have lost the rights to England in the Six Nations for the next 4 years. They will go to the ITV, so they do stay on free-to-air television. But interestingly, next year, they've also changed the schedule of the Six Nations. It starts on a Thursday, so it doesn't clash with the opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics. But interestingly, there's only one break now in the Six Nations as opposed to the traditional 2 breaks. As a coach, Ewen McKenzie, you now have 1 break, not 2. How does that change the way that you think about your preparation for the Six Nations?
I'd probably prefer to keep playing. Like, I don't think the breaks are difficult because they don't, you just, having extra time is not always a good thing. You like some momentum in it. Okay, if you've got a lot of injuries, you maybe you do want a break. So I think 1 break's appropriate. I think 2 breaks for a 5-game tournament's was too much for me. But
Yeah.
So
I certainly always felt I felt that when during the time that I was working with Eddie during his stint with England. It was just hard, as you say, like you're trying to get, certainly from my point of view, that narrative momentum, and you're trying to keep it going and trying to keep it interesting and trying to build some sort of advantage, and it just stops. It's like
everyone's used to week rugby. It doesn't matter at club level or whatever. That's what everyone's used to. So when you're having artificial breaks and things like that, it makes it. I prefer to keep going. I mean, in Super Rugby, you just plows on and then you have a bye, but it's not a break, or the competition has a break. So I think 1's more than enough, In some ways, do we even need that? But, that maybe assists everyone. But I don't know. It just creates other issues with competition structures below. So you've got to think about the whole thing. What's the concertina effect of these things? But anyway, I'm sure that the 1 break is offset by the fact that it suits the clubs probably.
Yeah. So anyway, I do think that's certainly an improvement. And just, I suppose, and again, this has obviously been the part of the game that I've been involved in around the media side of it and the communications piece of it. But I just would hope that we could be a little bit more interesting. And Rassie Erasmus, I think, is engaging, but I just find at the moment it's so flat. There just doesn't seem to be the effort to try to generate the interest. And I feel sorry for the journalists turning up to these media conferences where no one's got anything to say, or when they've got something to say, it's flat and it all sounds, there's a real sameness about it at the moment. And I just put out a call to those people with responsibility, the people who are holding the pen. Make it interesting. Make it easier for the journalists to write the stories. Give them something to write. Give them something to do. You were good at that during your time, Ewen McKenzie. I remember that great moment where you sent the Waratahs team bus around to the Brumbies ahead of the home match and parked the bus out in front of it was funny, it was a picture, and it just made it made it interesting. So I just would make a call to.
I took the players to all the favourite coffee shops the Brumbies guys likes to drink, have their coffees and that in Kingston and that. So we made sure that we were there and enjoying the fruits of Canberra lifestyle. So that was It was a bit of fun, but you had to do.
But it's fun.
Yeah, it was fun, but it was, we were trying to get a win down there, so it was. You had to try and do things a bit different.
Yeah, but I don't know. I would just hope that we've got to try. We're competing for attention.
100%.
And so we've got to be interesting.
100%.
And if we're not interesting, you can be easily ignored.
100%.
And I think that's part of our challenge at the moment.
I agree.
Is that we are not interesting enough, and we have great storylines, we have great sport, we have great personalities, but we just need more imagination. So please, and it doesn't matter whether it's Cyprus, Malta, Spain, England, South Africa, Italy, England, New Zealand, whoever's got their hand on the pen, make it interesting for the journalists, make it interesting for the media, make it interesting for people so as that they can engage with it. Yeah. And one final, people, a recommendation, I suppose. The Athletic FC podcast has done a great investigation into the underground world of illegal streaming, an investigation into the illegal streaming of the Premier League. 9% of the UK adult population watched it illegally in the last 6 months, which is 4.7 million people. Now, when you think about why is this relevant to rugby? Well, the big revenue line in rugby, like in all major professional sport, is television rights. And this illegal streaming is a big and emerging problem, and it is something that rugby is going to have to continue to monitor and address because if too many people are watching it illegally, people aren't going to pay for it. So I would just commend that to people. I certainly enjoyed it, and it is an issue that we will continue to keep focused on. So, Ewen McKenzie, a big thank you to you, and also a big thank you to Eddie Jones. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have a Substack. It is free, so if you'd like to go over and register on Substack, you can get access to ad-free content. You can get access to blogs. You can get access to all sorts of interesting content. A match report from Spain versus Ireland A last week, both in English and Spanish. So engage with us on that. Engage with us on social media. And please, if you would subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, engage with us on TikTok, wherever it is that you like to consume your content, please engage with us here at Rugby Unity. We certainly had some big numbers during the week. A TikTok that I did has clocked over 230,000 views last week, and certainly the program from last week certainly performed strongly as well. So a big thanks to all of you. And please do keep the comments and the questions coming, because I know Ewen McKenzie and Eddie Jones do like answering your questions. But thank you very much for coming back once again. Another huge weekend of rugby ahead for us all to enjoy. So I hope you do enjoy that. But for the moment, please be kind to each other. My name is David Pembroke, and it's bye for now.